The following message is for current players of Shadowrun 5th Edition. 5th Edition players, are you listening? Good. Here's what you need to know before you go any further. Everything you thought you knew about Edge, just forget it. Just kick it right out of your head. You do not want your 5th Edition ideas of Edge clouding your perception and reception of Edge in 6th Edition. If it helps, then come up with a different name so as not to bias your opinion of Edge. Call it, I don't know, Power Bucks or something, okay? Alright, now that we're starting with a clean slate, let's talk about Edge in Shadowrun 6th Edition. So whenever you're playing a tabletop RPG like Shadowrun, you're gonna find yourself in situations where your player character's skills are being pitted against the skills of another character or group of characters, as in some sort of a combat encounter. Subtlety or diplomacy has proven itself useless or ineffective, and you're now drawing your weapons to deal with the situation in a less ambiguous way. Resolving this combat scenario will require testing the combat skills of your player character against the skills of her opponent. Certainly. However, there's a lot more nuance to the confrontation than simply rolling one dice pool against another. What about environmental conditions? Lightning? Rain? Is one character hidden in the shadows while another has a bright light strobing in their face? Has a smoke grenade obscured the battlefield? These are all factors that might need to somehow be represented in the combat test that is about to occur. Now, this can be done in many different ways in different systems. You can attempt to explicitly represent each environmental situation or situational condition via dice pool or threshold modifiers, as 5th Edition Shadowrun does. Or you can try to abstract those conditions out by combining them in some way. 6th Edition Shadowrun has taken sort of a hybrid approach to this. They looked at environmental modifiers and said to themselves, well, if most of the time one character is affected by an environmental effect, then the others are as well. Which is true. When it's raining or dark, it's usually raining or dark for everyone. So what 6th Edition does is they don't give everyone in the battlefield arena a modifier for these conditions. Everyone shares the conditions. So if everyone's affected, then it's almost like no one is affected. So who cares? So instead, 6th Edition focuses on what the differences between the opposing sides are. Okay, so it's really dark in the warehouse. That's affecting everyone, true. But does one character have low light vision? Ah, well, this gives that character an advantage over the other characters in the attack situation. An edge. You get where this is going. This is the first key to understanding the new Edge system in Shadowrun 6th Edition. Essentially, it's a system that is designed to account for the many little situations and conditions that asymmetrically exist in a combat situation. Gaining these small tactical advantages in a combat situation earns you Edge, which accumulates over the course of combat scenarios. You spend that Edge then at any point in chunks of 1 to 5 Edge points at a time to gain explicit mechanical advantages that help you in combat. And these things you can spend them on are actually pretty darn cool. They come as small as spending 1 Edge to re-roll a die or add 3 to your initiative score, all the way to spending 5 Edge to cause your opponent to have to count 1s and 2s as glitches on their roll. That's a big deal. Many of them can be used in cool, interesting ways to make big impacts in combat. For example, there's an Edge action that I love called Anticipation. What it does is it costs 4 Edge and makes it so that you don't have to split your dice pool when attacking multiple targets. Each attack in a multiple targets attack uses your full dice pool. It's huge! You're rolling a ton of dice, and it's especially useful when you're going full auto and attacking a whole group of people. I mean, it causes carnage. It's sort of the actual real manifestation of your accumulated advantages that you've been earning over the course of the encounter, and you get to spend them to represent that advantage as Edge boosts. Let's get down to how it actually works. At the start of a gaming session, each player has their Edge pool reset to a value equal to their Edge attribute. Think of it like a little cup of Edge that you carry around. Every player's cup is big enough to hold an amount of Edge equal to your Edge attribute, and you fill that cup at the beginning of the night's gaming session. Now stick with me on the cup analogy. It will be useful in a second, I promise. Because when you begin any confrontation or combat encounter, like a combat or social situation where you'll be rolling opposed tests, you get a bigger cup. Let's call it a bucket. And that bucket can hold up to 7 edge. That goes for everyone. Everyone's bucket is the same size. Your cups, they're different sized and based on your edge attribute, but all the buckets can hold up to 7 edge, everybody's. So, you start this confrontation and you pour your cup into your bucket. This is important, bear with me a little longer. You still have the same amount of edge, but now, since it's in your bucket, you can collect up to 7 edge. There are many ways to gain edge during combat by comparing your current abilities and environmental situation to your opponent, but we'll talk about those in a second. Focus on the bucket. So there you are, gaining and spending edge to your heart's content in the ongoing confrontation. Now, let's say the confrontation is over. You don't necessarily get to continue on with the edge that you earned during the confrontation. You only carry on with up to your edge attribute in edge points. So what does that mean? Let's unpack it. So it means you take your bucket that you've been using in the ongoing confrontation and you pour it back into your cup. Remember, your cup only holds a max of your edge attribute. So if you had accumulated 7 unspent edge in this encounter, but your edge attribute is only 3, a smaller cup than your bucket, then when you pour the big old full bucket of 7 edge back into your cup, that 4 extra edge is going to be lost. You're going to spill it all over the floor. You didn't get to use it. That also means that if you end the confrontation with only 1 edge, say, then when you pour that 1 edge from your bucket into your cup, you'll still only have 1 edge because your cup can hold all the edge that you're transferring over. You get it? Clear? Good. Simple. So, the burning question right now is, how do you gain edge in an ongoing situation? Well, there are 3 ways. First, compare attack and defense ratings. So whenever it is your turn in the encounter, you compare your attack rating against the defense rating of your opponent. If your attack rating is at least 4 greater than your opponent's defense rating, then you get a point of edge. Boom! Don't get too excited though. If your opponent's defense rating is at least 4 greater than your attack rating, then they get the point of edge. Bummer. All right, but don't be too bummed out, right? Because that goes in reverse both ways. If you are the target of an attack and your defense rating is at least 4 greater than their attack rating, then you get the point of edge. So you can gain edge even if it's not your turn. See what I'm saying? It happens both ways. It's pretty good. It's coming and going. Second way to gain edge, compare your situational advantages. After you've done that simple attack and defense rating math, you need to think about the situation that you're in and whether or not you have an advantage over your opponent. Do you have the high ground in a firefight? Are you wearing low light goggles while your opponent fumbles around in the dark? Have you obscured the battlefield with a smoke grenade, but you're using thermographic vision to go through it? These are all advantages that you should add up against your opponent. Now, your opponent's adding them up as well. So if at the end of this comparison, you find that you have more situational advantages than your opponent, then bam, you get to give yourself an edge. Third and finally, you will check to see if you have any gear or qualities that provide edge as part of their description. As an example, the toughness quality gives a player a single bonus edge to be used for damage resistance tests. Also, the hidden arm slide gives a bonus edge on the same round when the arm slide is first used. So things like that. The last thing to note is that you can only gain 2 edge per combat round, period. Whether that be defensively or offensively. You can't gain more edge than 2 until the combat round rolls back around to the first person again. So that's how edge works. Now, how do I feel about it? Okay, in general, I actually find it really fun. I think they were trying to streamline and speed up combat by getting rid of situational modifiers from 5th edition, but I don't think that actually happened. I think it seems to be taking just as much time to juggle edge as it did to, calculate modifiers. However, I like this system way better. Calculating modifiers never felt good to me. You were spending a bunch of time tallying up all the different ways that dice were just going to be removed from your dice pool. This edge system is much more positive. I find myself sifting through my list of edge boosts excitedly, trying to figure out what I'm going to do next to eke out the most from my remaining edge pool, and then trying to actually figure out how I'm going to get myself more edge to spend in the next round. It's much more active and much more positive. Now, having said that, it's important to note that the character I've played in 6th edition is a Street Sam style combat specialist character. I'm fast, I have a lot of minor actions to move around or do things, and firearms combat is what I do. I haven't had the chance to play a social focused character to see how it plays out, or even a magical character. From accounts I've heard, it's somewhat challenging or not so straightforward to find ways to gain edge as a magical character or a magician in combat. Depending on what your magical specialty is, I think combat mages are a little bit easier, but in general, it can be kind of difficult to find that out. Now, to be clear, each archetype and style of play, meaning social, matrix, rigging, magic, etc., all have their own lists of ways to compete and gain and compare and gain edge in their respective encounter types. So it's entirely possible that they play out just fine. I simply haven't had the chance to play with it. As far as magicians go, it seems like there are some interesting, unique ways, like your spirits can help you gain edge, and it's easier to summon them in combat. And also certain combat spells can give you ways to gain edge. So like I said, it may just be that you have to learn the ways that you gain edge, but I also worry a little bit that it might sort of shoehorn you into a style of playing your magician as the example archetype. All in all, as far as combat goes, and let's face it, combat is a big part of Shadowrun, the edge system seems really fun. It seems really different, and it's made me start actually thinking in combat again. I used to never pull out smoke grenades or flashbacks. Combat was often over before those things had a chance to affect the battlefield, but now I actually get excited about going into combat and figuring out how I'm going to do things differently in order to gain my advantage. It's so much more fun and so much more tactical. Bye, chummers. Oh, my nose has been itching this whole time. Blah. All right, almost 30 minutes on that recording. Is everything still going? I think we're good. That's a wrap.